so far, they say they've had a total application of 846,462. They've had beneficiaries of 581,878. Total amount disbursed 107.7 billion. And then institutional fees disbursed 61.3 billion naira. Upkeep allowances disbursed 46.3 billion. Let's talk about impacts today with the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Nelfund, Mr. Akintunde Sawyer, joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Sawyer, good morning and welcome to the program.
Very good morning to you, and thank you for having me on the program.
Great. So we see these amounts and numbers, and they look impressive. I guess we can say a lot of students have been affected so far through Nelfund.
Yes, I think that it would be reasonable to suggest that after 16 months of operation, 582,000 Nigerian students have benefited from this program. It's also important to recognize, given that we're talking about impact, that these 582,000 beneficiaries come from families. Largely, these people, these Nigerians, future leaders of ours, would have been funded in the past is through funds from their parents, from people who have perhaps sympathy for them. I think we're reaching a point with this where those people who have been previously funding students who technically don't have jobs, can't work, certainly can't afford to pay for their education, those people have found relief. And I think you can multiply 582,000 by 5 to get a sense of just how many Nigerians have been impacted so far by this. We're not even at the beginning of this process. I think given what we've seen so far, there are a lot more people to benefit from this. And the president, when he talked about renewed hope, has extended this mantra to renewed hope for Nigerian students and for Nigeria's future.
Yeah, so let me just bring this up from before we delve into the deeper part of it. So yesterday I had, the youth leader, and I tried to confirm that there's no political affiliation connected to some of these benefits to the youth.
Yeah, so let me just provide a little bit of education as to how this works. We have a portal, www.nelf.gov.ng. This portal is totally apolitical. It's totally non-religious. In fact, the only thing that it does is that it confirms that you are a Nigerian citizen from anywhere in Nigeria, a Nigerian citizen. It confirms that you're a student because you need your JAMB registration number. And it confirms that you are at an institution or about to onboard in an institution. So we have a registration number requirement or a matriculation number requirement. It is totally apolitical. People who go to apply for this loan are never seen by us, never engaged directly by us. And unless they have a hitch on the way, they apply for this loan online and they receive the benefit online. In other words, their fees are paid to the institution directly online. Their upkeep, if they apply for the upkeep, which is a monthly fee, is paid directly to their bank accounts online. So when you talk about political, His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, this particular program for him is about Nigerians. It's not about party affiliation. It's not about religion. It's not about any other type of bias. As long as you're a student who is Nigerian, who might affect the future of this country, the president wants you to benefit from this.
Some time ago, you did share new guidelines. Perhaps you could give us some details from that.
Sure. So, look, the way these things work, the National Assembly introduced an act that pretty much spells out what the intention and what the legal requirements or the legal framework around this should be. We have then applied guidelines to it. The guidelines we issued initially which were issued at the beginning of this process in May 2024, have been under constant review. Some of the things that we discovered is that where we were intending to pay the entire fees, the entire institutional charges for students when they are admitted into an institution and they've applied, we discovered that there might be some additional charges that people have to pay. So, for example, we've committed the entire fees, 100% of the fees, to the institution for the student. Sometimes they encountered departmental fees. There were all sorts of other fees that they were liable to pay. And of course, the problem with that is that if they don't have those fees, it makes a nonsense of the 100% fees that we've paid for them. So we've issued guidelines looking to harmonize all the various fees that all the various institutions apply for students to pay. And we sought to harmonize all of this so that 100% means 100% of the fees. The other thing that we've been looking at is the timelines. So when somebody applies for a loan, they have an expected timeline in their head. In other words, they are also facing deadlines. Deadlines for registration, deadlines for examinations, deadlines to pay, certain things within the institution, which the institution requires for the institution to run. Now, because we run an electronic system, we have a pretty clear idea of what time it takes to receive an application, to verify it, to approve it, and then to disburse it. That last piece, the disbursement piece, is entirely reliant on the speed that the institutions apply to verification. Verification for us means that the students apply randomly. We don't know who they are. We don't know where they're from. We just know that, they've passed all the eligibility tests that are online. Once it gets to the institution, the institution's authorities must confirm that the students are indeed their students, the JAM matches up, the matriculation number matches up, their name, their date of birth, their department, their faculty, their level of study, all matches up. Once they've checked all of those, and of course, importantly, the fees as well. Once they've checked all these details, they then verify and send back to us. As soon as we receive it, we push it out. The guidelines that you're referring to seek to put some very specific timelines and responsibility on every party as to how quickly we can push the process so that students are not kept waiting for funds when they need it.
And in cases of hikes in tuition fees and all of that, since you're paying directly to the institution, I guess you also adjust what you're paying, yes?
So, thank you. That's a very useful question. So, let me just quickly explain. When I talked about verification, one of the things I mentioned is the verification of the fees. Look, the start of this process is that all institutions are required to provide us with a list of all their students. They're required to provide us with a list of, alongside that list, their names, their date of birth, corrected and checked, the course they're studying, the level they're at, and importantly, they're required to provide us with the fees, the full fees for that student, for every student, which is obviously related to the course and the year of study. Now, once those fees are put into our system, that is what the student sees when they go to apply for the institutional loan. When they see that, if they're in agreement with that, that's what they apply for. So referring specifically to your comment around the hike in fees, yes, we have noticed that some institutions have put their fees up. Now, it would be presumptuous of me to say that they put their fees up just because of Nelfund. But look, we are concerned about ensuring, the president is concerned about ensuring that the amounts of funds that we have available stretch to as many Nigerians as possible. Therefore, for us, if we find fees that are outlandish, that are too high, that spike year on year, we will flag it and we will not compromise the ability of the majority of Nigerians to access education through this excellent scheme, because a handful of institutions decide that they want to profiteer. I'm not accusing anyone specifically, but as a principle, we will not go along with profiteering at the expense of ordinary Nigerians. It's what the president has instructed. It's what we're going to do for Nigerians.
Yeah, well, I hope in cases like that, the students will not be at the losing end of it, because, I mean, that might mean the student has to start looking for another school, try to get admission and things like that. But we do hope that we don't hear such stories. Now, one thing that I don't think I've heard so much of is a repayment plan, because the sustenance of this scheme will depend on repayment. We cannot expect that the government will, forever be doling out money, for it. There's supposed to be a plan for repayment. Is it too early to talk about that now?
Not really. It's not too early to talk about repayment. Repayment is a very important element of the sustainability of this program. But let me tell you very quickly, before I go and tell you how repayment happens. The law allows us to raise funds from external parties. So apart from the funding that the government is providing, which we are, beholden to 100% today, our intention, because the law allows us to do this, is to raise funds from investors, from interested parties, from donors, from philanthropists, for people with a special interest in education. So we can go to other people other than the students who are paying back to seek for support. And we're not going to be ashamed about doing that, because at the end of the day, this education that we're trying to give access for students to will benefit the nation. It will bring peace to this country. It'll reduce banditry, it'll reduce crime, it'll increase productivity, it'll increase our competitiveness, both locally and globally. So, we fully intend to ensure that we're not going to put all of the burden of this on repayment. And let me explain why. This scheme says, or our guidelines say, that people don't have to start paying back until 2 years post, 2 years after they've completed their NYSC. Look, simply put, if nobody pays back until 2 years after their NYSC, which, by the way, they can pay back early, if nobody does that, we're going to be running on government coffers for quite a long time. So we have a fund mobilization department which actually is seeking funds from others. The other thing I should tell you is that when they do start paying back, it's only on the basis that they have a job. If a person does not have a job, they do not pay back. So even 2 years after NYSC, you only pay back when you have a job. Now, guess what? It is the employer that has the obligation to deduct 10% of the income of that individual and pay it back to the Nelfund. We don't know today what the incomes of individuals are going to look like. So that 10% may not even cover what we're expending today. But we've got to look at this from the perspective primarily of impact. We're going to impact our nation. We're going to impact our competitiveness. We're going to increase the tax base because more people will be employable. We're going to bring in more foreign investment because our people are going to be better educated. So instead of jobs going to India, going to China, going to other parts of the world, the jobs will come to Nigeria if we educate our people properly, without putting the burden of, hey, look, you're going to have to pay back in this amount of time or this amount of money. So we do have the laxity of being able to generate revenues from outside of the ones the government has given us. And in fact, even the revenues that the government is providing for us, we're able to invest that revenue for a return. We're very transparent. One of the reasons that we are very transparent with our data and our numbers and what we're doing is because nobody's going to invest in this program unless they can see that there's transparency and professionalism. What you're going to see us doing over the next few years is us putting in place sustainable structures, professionalizing the people who run this agency, the people who really know what they're doing, who really know how to manage money, and who are really honest and transparent and well vetted. We're going to leave a legacy here of continuity in this. And this is what the president wants. He doesn't want this to be a 4-year program or an 8-year program. He wants this to continue well into the future. Everyone else is doing it, and the countries we're seeing this happening in are doing very well.
All right, Mr. Sawyer, I'm just curious. Have you had interest? Have you those external funding sources you're talking about, individuals, corporates? Have you had positive responses so far?
The answer to your question is yes, absolutely. We have had, well, first of all, let me start off by telling you that some of the people who took loans from the Nigerian government in the 70s, because there was a similar scheme that was available in the 70s, have started giving their funds or they're repaying their loans to Nelfund. This speaks to the transparency and the confidence they have in what we're doing here. So that's one thing. The second thing is that there are industrialists. There are serious, major industrialists who have approached us to say, hey, look, I want to fund 10,000 students. I want to fund 20,000 students. Please, how can we help get you as Nelfund to help administer that? A lot of people, you need to remember, a lot of people in this country are paying fees for wards, for people who they just want to help, but they don't have a mechanism for that. Nelfund is seen as a mechanism for that. But very specifically, to answer your question, there is a lot of interest in the principle of putting funds into Nelfund. I say the principle because on top of that principle, we've got to build confidence. We've got to build a proper governance structure. We've got to be able to demonstrate that we know what we're doing and that we have a plan for the future. And I'm going to be rolling out some of these things over the next few months and perhaps over the next year as to how we're going to ensure that the right people are running this agency for the future. Our job at the moment is to lay the foundation to ensure that what comes on top of it is solid. But very specifically, and I'll repeat, we have been approached by industrialists, and we're also talking to some potential foreign interested parties, NGOs, who are interested in seeing how they can use this to ensure that the economy is more stable, the polity is more stable, and that there's less crime, perhaps, and less frustration, and maybe even less migration out of Nigeria. We have a pivotal role to play in this country, and thankfully we have the political support of His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who's absolutely determined to support this program for the benefit of all Nigerians.
Mr. Chai, you did say that you're at liberty at the fund to invest. I wonder what areas or platforms of investment is of interest to Nelfund. Have you already started it, or you're just thinking about it?
Okay, so, you know, the best returns that you can get as an investor is when you have sort of mixed platforms for you to invest in. Today, we are a government entity. We're 100% owned by government, which means that we are under TSA, Treasury Single Account. It also means, by inference, that we can only invest in government instruments. They're very safe, and sometimes you get good returns. But look, when we want to get serious about investment, we're going to have to find a way of getting out of the TSA, because once we're out of the TSA, then we can work with serious investors, serious players in the investment space, so that we can wander outside of the restrictions of government to ensure that we can get real funding in and we can do real investments that give us good income to be able to sustain this. There is one country that I'm aware of, let me name it, Malaysia, where the student loan scheme is almost entirely now in the hands of the private sector. That's the way we've got to go. Government is an enabler. Government, under this president, under this administration, under this Tinubu administration, has enabled this to start. We've got to make sure that we put in place a structure that enables it to run and run and run and run and run beyond government. So this is what we're trying to do, and the question you ask is very instrumental in that process. Getting investment right, making sure that we have very clear guidelines as to how investments are made, and proper governance so that we don't lose money, that we continue to gain. We can invest in all sorts of things, real estate, maybe even the stock market, pension funds. We can, once we get the waiver that we require from government. We're hoping that we'll be able to get that. There's a process and some bureaucracy to get through to be able to do that. But it is the only way to go. It's the only way to go. All
right. We hope to hear that you're able to get that waiver so we can, see the investment opportunities that you would embrace. But thank you so much, the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Nelfund, Mr. Akintunde Sawyer.
Thank you very much for having me here, and please invite us back so we can update you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.